Chapter 68 Elections. Electoral System. Article 324 to Article 329 in Part 15 of the Constitution makes the following provision with regard to the electoral system in our country. First point, the Constitution, Article 324, provides for an independent election commissioner in order to ensure free and fair elections in the country. The power of superintendence, direction, and conduct of elections to the Parliament, the state legislature, the office of President, and the office of Vice President is vested in the Commission. At present, the Commission consists of a Chief Election Commissioner and 2 election commissioners. Second point, there is to be only one general electoral roll for every territorial constituency for election to the Parliament and the state legislature. Thus, the Constitution has abolished the system of communal representation and separate electorates, which led to the partition of the country. Third point, no person is to be ineligible for inclusion in the electoral roll on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, or any of them. Further, no person can claim to be included in any special electoral roll for any constituency on grounds only of religion, race, caste, or sex, or any of them. Thus, the Constitution has accorded equality to every citizen in the matter of electoral franchise. The election to the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies are to be on the basis of adult franchise. Fourth point, the election to the Lok Sabha and the state assemblies are to be on the basis of adult franchise. Thus, every person who is a citizen of India and who is 18 years of age is entitled to vote at the election, provided he is not disqualified under the provision of the Constitution or any law made by the appropriate legislature, Parliament, or the state legislature on the ground of non-residence, unsound mind, crime, or corrupt or illegal practice. Fifth point, Parliament may make provision with respect to all matters relating to election to the Parliament and the state legislatures, including the preparation of electoral roll, the delimitation of constituencies, and all other matters necessary for securing their due constitution. Sixth point, the state legislatures can also make provision with respect to all the matters relating to elections to the state legislatures, including the preparation of electoral rolls and all other matters necessary for securing their due constitution. But they can make provision only for those matters which are not covered by the Parliament. In other words, they can only supplement the parliamentary law and cannot override it. Seventh point, the Constitution declares that the validity of any law relating to the delimitation of constituency or allotment of seats to such constituencies cannot be questioned in any court. Consequently, the orders issued by the Delimitation Commission become final and cannot be challenged in any court. Eighth point, the Constitution lays down that no election to the Parliament or the state legislature is to be questioned except by an election petition presented to such authority and in such manner as provided by appropriate legislature. Since 1966, the election petitions are triable by the High Courts alone, but the appellate jurisdiction lies with the Supreme Court. Article 323b empowers the appropriate legislature, Parliament, or the state legislatures to establish a tribunal for the adjudication of election disputes. It also provides for the exclusion of the jurisdiction of all courts, except the special leave appeal jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in such disputes. So far, no such tribunal has been established. It must be noted here that in Chandra Kumar case 1997, the Supreme Court declared this provision as unconstitutional. Consequently, if at any time an election tribunal is established, an appeal from its decision lies to the High Court. Election Machinery. Election Commission of India, ECI. Under Article 324 of the Constitution of India, the Election Commission of India is vested with the power of superintendence, direction and control of conducting the elections to the Lok Sabha and the State Legislative Assembly. The Election Commission of India is a 3-member body with 1 Chief Election Commissioner and 2 election commissioners. The President of India appoints the Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners. Chief Electoral Officer, CEO. The Chief Electoral Officer of state or union territory is authorized to supervise the election work in the state or union territory subject to the overall superintendence, direction and control of the Election Commission. The Election Commission of India nominates or designates an officer of the government of state or union territory as the Chief Electoral Officer in consultation with that state government or union territory administration. DEO, District Election Officer. District Election Officer. Subject to the superintendence, direction and control of the Chief Electoral Officer, the DEO, District Election Officer, supervises the election work of a district. The Election Commission of India nominates or designates an officer of the state government as the district election officer in consultation with the state government. Returning Officer, RO. The returning officer of a parliamentary or a assembly constituency is responsible for the conduct of the election in the parliamentary or assembly constituency concerned. The Election Commission of India nominates or designates an officer of the government or a local authority as a returning officer for each of the assembly and parliamentary constituency in consultation with the state government or union territory administration. In addition, the Election Commission of India also appoints 1 or more assistant returning officers for each of the assembly and the parliamentary constituency to assist the returning officer in the performance of his function in connection to the conduct of elections. Electoral Registration Officer, ERO. The ERO is responsible for the preparation of electoral rolls for a parliamentary or assembly constituency. The Election Commission of India, in consultation with the state or union territory government, appoints an officer of the government or the local authorities as the Electoral Registration Officer. In addition, the Election Commission of India also appoints 1 or more assistant Electoral Registration Officer to assist the Electoral Registration Officer in the performance of his functions in the matter of preparation or revision of the electoral rolls. Presiding Officer, the PO. The presiding officer, with the assistance of polling officers, conducts the poll at the polling station. The District Election Officer appoints the presiding officers and the polling officers. In the case of union territory, such appointments are made by the returning officer. Observers. The Election Commission of India nominates officers of government as observers for the parliamentary and assembly constituencies. These observers are of various kinds. First, general observers. The Commission deploys general observers in adequate number to ensure smooth conduct of elections. These observers are asked to keep a close watch on every stage of the electoral process to ensure free and fair elections. Second, expenditure observers. The expenditure observer from the central government services are appointed to keep a close watch on election expenditure of the candidate and to ensure that no inducement is offered to the electors, including during the entire election process for exercise of their franchise. Third, police observer. The Commission deploys IPS officer as the police observer at state and district level. Depending upon the sensitivity of the constituency, wherever required, they monitor all activities relating to the force deployment, law and order situation, and coordinate between the civil and the police administration to ensure free and fair elections. Fourth point, awareness observer. For the first time in the 16th Lok Sabha election 2014, the Commission deployed central awareness officers to oversee the efficient and effective management of the electoral process at the field level, mainly in respect of voter awareness and facilitation. Awareness observers are deployed to observe the intervention undertaken by the election machinery to bridge the gap in people's participation in the electoral process, particularly in regards to the voter turnout. They also monitor the various media-related aspects of RP Act 1951 and observe the mechanism directed by the Commission at district levels on checking the problem of paid news. Fifth point, micro-observers. In addition to the general observers, the Commission also deploys micro-observers. Micro-observers to observe the poll proceedings on the poll day in selected critical polling stations. They are chosen from the central government, central PSUs officials. Micro-observers verify the BMF at the polling station and certify the same before the start of polling. They observe the proceeding at the polling station on the poll day, right from the mock poll to the completion of poll and process of sealing of EVM and other documents to ensure that all the instructions of the Commission are complied with by the polling parties and polling agents. They also report to the general observers directly about vitiation of the poll proceeding, if any, in their allotted polling stations. Sixth, assistant expenditure observer. In addition to the expenditure observer, assistant expenditure observers are appointed for each assembly segment to ensure that all major election campaign events are videographed and complaints of the electoral malpractice are promptly attended. Election process. Time of elections. Elections for the Lok Sabha and every state legislative assembly have to take place every 5 years, unless called earlier. The President can dissolve the Lok Sabha and call a general election before 5 years is up, if the government can no longer command the confidence of the Lok Sabha, and if there is no alternative government available to take over. Schedule of elections. When the 5-year limit is up, or the legislature has been dissolved and new elections have been called, the Election Commission puts into effect the machinery for holding an election. The Constitution states that there can be no longer than 6 months between the last session of the dissolved Lok Sabha and recalling of the new House. So, elections have to be conducted before then. The Commission normally announces the schedule of elections in a major press conference of a few weeks before the formal process is set in motion. The Model Code of Conduct for guidance of the candidates and the political parties come into effect after such announcement. The formal process for the election starts with the notification calling upon the electorate to elect members of a house. As soon as the notifications are out, candidate can start filing their nominations in the constituencies from where they wish to contest. These are scrutinized by the returning officer of the constituency concerned after the last date for the same is over, after about a week. The validity the validly appointed nominated candidate the validly nominated candidate can withdraw from the contest within 2 days from the date of scrutiny. Contesting candidates can get at least 2 weeks for political campaign before the actual date of poll. On the account of the vast magnitude of operation and massive size of the electorate, polling is held on a number of days for the national election. A separate date for counting is fixed and the result declared for each constituency by the concerned returning officer. The Commission compiles the complete list of members elected and issues an appropriate notification for the due constitution of the House. With this, the process of election is complete and the President, in case of the Lok Sabha, and governors of the concerned state in case of state assemblies can then convene their respective house to hold their sessions. Oath or affirmation. It is necessary for a candidate to make and subscribe an oath or affirmation before an officer authorized by the Election Commission. For any particular election, the authorized persons are principally the returning officer and assistant returning officer for the constituency. In the case of a candidate confined in a prison or under preventive detention, the superintendent of the prison or commandant of the detention camp in which he is so confined or is under such detention is authorized to administer the oath. In the case of a candidate confined to bed in a hospital or elsewhere owing to illness or any other cause, the medical superintendent in charge of the hospital or the medical practitioner attending on him is similarly authorized. If a candidate is outside India, the Indian ambassador or high commissioner or diplomatic counselor authorized by him can also administer oath or affirmation. The candidate in person is required to make the oath or affirmation immediately after presenting his nomination papers and in any case not later than the day previous to the date of the scrutiny. Election campaigns. The campaign is the period when political parties put forward their candidates and arguments which they hope to persuade people to vote for their candidate and parties. Candidates are given a week to put forward their nomination. They are scrutinized by the returning officer and if not found to be in order can be rejected after a summary hearing. Validly nominated candidates can withdraw within 2 days after nominations have been scrutinized. The official campaign lasts at least 2 weeks from the drawing up of list of nominated candidates and officially ends 48 hours before polling closes. During the election campaign, the political parties and contesting candidates are expected to abide by a model code of conduct evolved by the Election Commission on the basis of a consensus among political parties. The model code lays down broad guidelines as to how the political parties and the candidates should conduct themselves during the election campaign. It is intended to maintain the election campaign on healthy lines, avoid clashes and conflicts between the political parties or their supporters, and to ensure peace and order during the campaign period and thereafter until the results are declared. The model code also prescribes guidelines for the ruling party either at the center or in the state to ensure that a level field is maintained and that no cause is given for any complaint that the ruling party has used its official position for the purpose of its election campaign. Once an election has been called, parties issue manifestos detailing the programs they wish to implement if elected to government, the strengths of their leaders and the failures of the opposition parties and their leaders. Slogans are used to popularize and identify parties and issues, and pamphlets and posters distributed to the electorate. Rallies and meetings where the candidates try to persuade, cajole, and enthuse supporters and denigrate opponents are held throughout the constituencies. Personal appeals and promises of reforms are made, with the candidates traveling the length and breadth of the constituency to try to influence as many potential supporters as possible. Polling days. Polling is normally held on a number of different days in different constituencies to enable the security forces and those monitoring the election to keep law and order and ensure that voting during the election is fair. Ballot paper and symbols. After the nomination of candidates is complete, a list of competing candidates is prepared by the returning officer and the ballot paper is printed. Ballot paper are printed with the name of the candidate in language set by the Election Commission and the symbols allotted to each of the candidates. Candidates of the recognized parties are allotted their party symbol. Voting procedure. Voting is by secret ballot. Polling stations are usually set up in public institutions such as school, community halls. To enable as many electors as possible to vote, the officials of the Election Commission try to ensure that there is a polling station within 2 kilometers of every voter and that no polling station should have to deal with more than 1,500 voters. Each polling station is open for at least 8 hours on the day of the election. On entering the polling station, the elector is checked against the electoral roll and allotted a ballot paper. The elector votes by marking the ballot paper with a rubber stamp on or near the symbol of the candidate of his choice inside a screened compartment of the polling station. The voter then folds the ballot paper and inserts it in a common ballot box, which is kept in full view of the presiding officer and polling agents of the candidates. This marking system eliminates the possibility of ballot paper being superstitiously taken out of the polling station or being put in the ballot box. Since 1998, the Commission has increasingly used the EVM, electronic voting machines, instead of ballot boxes. In 2003, all state elections and by-elections were held using the EVMs. Encouraged by this, the Commission took a historic decision to use only EVMs for the Lok Sabha elections in 2004. More than 1 million EVMs are used in this election. Electoral voting machine, EVM. An electoral voting machine, EVM, is a simple electronic device used to record vote in place of a ballot paper and boxes, which were used earlier in conventional voting system. The advantages of EVM over the traditional ballot paper are given here. First, it eliminates the possibility of invalid or doubtful votes, which in many cases are the root cause of controversies and election petitions. Second, it makes the process of counting of votes much faster than conventional system. Third, it reduces to a great extent the quantity of paper used, thus saving a large number of trees, making the process eco-friendly. Fourth, it reduces the cost of printing almost nil, as only one sheet of paper is required for each polling station. Supervising elections. The Election Commission also appoints a large number of observers to ensure that the campaign is conducted fairly and that people are free to vote as they choose. Election expenditure. Observers keep a check on the amount that each candidate and party spends on the election. Counting of votes. After the polling has finished, the votes are counted under the supervision of the returning officer and observers appointed by the Election Commission. After the counting of votes is over, the returning officer declares the name of the candidate to whom the largest number of votes has been given as a winner and as having been returned by the constituency to the concerned house. Election to the Lok Sabha are carried out using the first past the post electoral system. The country is split into separate geographical areas known as constituencies, and electors can cast one vote each for a candidate, the winner being the candidate who gets the maximum votes. Election to the state assemblies are carried out in the same manner as for the Lok Sabha elections, with the states and union territories divided into single-member constituency and the first past the post electoral system used. Media coverage. In order to bring as much transparency as possible to the electoral process, the media is encouraged and provided with facilities to cover the election, although subject to maintaining the secrecy of the vote. Media persons are given special passes to enter the polling station, to cover the poll process and counting halls during the actual counting of votes. Election petitions. Any elector or candidate can file an election petition if he or she thinks that there has been malpractice during the election. An election petition is not an ordinary civil suit, but treated as a contest in which the whole constituency is involved. Election petitions are tried by the High Court of the state involved and, if upheld, can even lead to the restaging of the election in that constituency. Refer to the table 68.1. Results of the Lok Sabha election. Refer to the table 68.2. Prime Ministers after each Lok Sabha general elections. Refer to the table 68.3. Participation in Lok Sabha election. Refer to the table 68.4. Women in the Lok Sabha election. Table 68.5. Cost of Lok Sabha elections. Table 68.6. Largest and smallest area-wise Lok Sabha constituency in 14th general election 2004. Table 68.7. Largest and smallest elector-wise Lok Sabha constituency in 16th general elections 2014. Table 68.8. Articles relating to election at a glance. Article number 324. Superintendent's direction and control of the elections to be vested in an election commission. Article 325. No person to be ineligible for inclusion in or to claim to be included in an special electoral roll on grounds of religion, caste, race or sex. Article number 326. Elections to the House of the People and to the Legislative Assembly of State to be on the basis of adult suffrage. Article 327. Power of the Parliament to make provision with respect to elections to legislatures. Article 328. Power of legislature of a state to make provision with respect to elections to such legislature. Article number 329. Bar to interference by courts in electoral matters. Article 329A. Special provision as to elections to Parliament in